In this video, I'm sharing a technique that's worth trying for street photography. It's a very creative technique and you can get fantastic results. It's shooting handheld at 1/8 of a second. And I'm going to be doing 3 variations of this technique in this video. Welcome, I'm Simon Byrne, a professional photographer, filmmaker and creative director with over 35 years of experience, which I am happy to share with you for free. I've got nothing to sell yet. In this video I'm using my rating system that I introduced last year on the channel. Some photos aren't the greatest, but they illustrate the technique. I think it's important to differentiate a poor or mediocre photo from a great one. Of course, what I rate and like and don't like isn't right or wrong. It's just my preference, my opinion. If you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments. So I went to Toronto, and on the way in, on the subway, I started shooting just to warm up. Now I didn't do much vlogging because it was extremely cold, and holding a GoPro with a metal cage around it and a camera, cold on the old fingers. Because of the weather, we started indoors. A friendly security guard said we can't use tripods, which is the case everywhere indoors, and luckily this handheld technique means we don't need one. We're just doing a quick stop off at Union Station. Some beautiful architecture here, big space, lots of light and contrast, and there's lots of movement with people walking across and up and down the steps. So I'm doing some handheld shots and using the in-body stabilization in my Leica and shooting at 1/8 of a second. So I'm getting some nice motion blur of people walking, and it's working out pretty good. One thing to note is when someone or something moves across your composition, you're going to get a lot more noticeable blur than if somebody or something walks towards you or away from you. I mean, I suppose that's kind of obvious, but maybe not so obvious is when someone is walking away or towards you from the camera in the foreground of your composition, the motion blur is far more evident than someone walking in the background of the photo. Like this one. Terrible photo, a good example. The second variation of this technique is to find a scene that looks good and wait for someone or something to enter it. Here the scaffolding provided a strong graphic element to this composition and framed everything quite nicely, and also acted as lead-in lines. I haven't taken my camera off 1/8 of a second, and I just found this fantastic scene with scaffolding and the steam vent coming out of the street, and 1/8 of a second. I'm not touching that setting for the rest of the day. Oh, I might do. It took a little bit of patience to wait for the right person to stand in the right spot and get a car move in front of them at the same time. But it was worth the wait because I love this shot. I've just come around the corner and I'm still getting scaffolding and steam. Fantastic. One important thing to note is if you're shooting at very slow shutter speeds, even if you're on your base ISO and you have your aperture up to something like f/16, you still might find you're going to get overexposed, particularly on bright sunny days. So you might need something like a neutral density filter. A 3-stop, for example, is a good filter to have to help you get the right exposure. Despite the snow on the ground, it was very dull and overcast, and I had a yellow filter on my Leica which loses me about 1 stop. So overall I was able to shoot without the help of an ND filter that day. So now I'm moving from holding the camera steady to capture motion to moving the camera with the subject, panning. This is the third variation of this technique. And here's a shot using my Z50 actually. It's the only time I used it today. I just can't get away from this little guy in black and white photography. It's an addiction. There weren't actually a lot of skaters, so we kept on walking. Time for lunch.
Yeah, a little bit of duck.
Right, duck lunch.
Duck lunch.
Let's go.
That's it. Yeah, let's go.
When we come out to do street photography in Toronto, we always head to Chinatown because not only is it great for photography, it's the best food. Perfect place for lunch. Peking duck and pork on rice. Right, so the idea today was, as I said earlier, we're going to do some long exposures and try some new things with our street photography. And it's very, very cold though. It's actually -14, or it was this morning. The main reason to come out today was, despite the cold, we're supposed to be getting snow this afternoon, and we thought long exposure street photography in snow would be pretty cool. It hasn't arrived yet. Hopefully it will come a little bit later on in the day. Wow, that hit the spot. Nice warm food. Finally, some snow appeared, but it only came down fast and furious for a very brief time. Decided to keep my shutter speed at 1/8 of a second still, because the results that I was getting, cars and people moving across the composition, I was very happy with. But this meant the snow wasn't really registering very prominently in the photos. I would have needed to shoot a little faster for that, but I wouldn't have got the amount of motion blur that I wanted. We made a quick stop at the Well, a new development which is a joy to photograph in warmer weather. But in this cold, no one was out. Very sparse pickings. The photos were very disappointing, so we moved on pretty quickly. It was getting dark, so we thought it would be a good idea to head into the financial district again and find those steam vents. Time to do a quick pan of the car. I haven't done much panning today. Steam coming out of vents in the city at night time are particularly good because you get tons of atmosphere. You get a very ethereal look to a lot of photos, and the backlighting, and just fantastic. These were my favourite photos from the day, I think. Before we headed home, we thought we'd just pop back to the skating rink to see what's going on, and it was packed. It was much colder, so I don't know what all these people were thinking. I guess it's a Canadian thing. So, handheld street photography using mostly in-camera stabilization instead of a tripod. A few of my photos were shot at 1/4 of a second, I think a couple at 1/15 of a second, but the vast majority at 1/8 of a second. That is the magic number, at least for me, with this little guy. and the results that I like. A lot of fun and worth trying. Let me know in the comments if you've tried that or it's something that's of interest. I appreciate you watching. Do subscribe and I'll see you next time.